Wait a minute. Let's see.
Into the economic crystal ball. What do Alaskans see?
The immediate outlook versus long-term immediate, I'm not really sure. I'm not too positive.
I hope that I would see prosperity, but it's difficult to know.
A recent survey shows consumer confidence in Alaska has dropped for the first time in a long time. Next on Frontiers, a look at what that number reflects about where our economy may be headed.
Sponsorship for Frontiers with Rhonda McBride is provided by Kupik Corporation and Spenard Builders Supply. Alaska, where there are old triumphs, but also new frontiers, with challenges as great as the state itself, but a belief the best is yet to come, bringing you the faces, the places, and the spirit of the last frontier. This is Frontiers with Rhonda McBride.
Welcome to our program. This week we venture into Alaska's economic frontiers, where the lines between perception and reality are often blurred. There are places in Anchorage where you can find crystal balls. But for me, the only question is, which one?
It's not the logical brain. You got to take your logical brain out of it, and this is, how does it feel?
Similar to opinion polls, which also want to know how it feels. And how does it resonate with what's going on around you? Seems like a crystal ball is as good a tool as any, but we did get this warning.
When the sun hits this, it does not take long for it to burn.
So here is a crystal ball. The bigger worry, though, at the moment was breaking the crystal ball.
Wait a minute. Let's see.
People make decisions every day about whether they'll spend money or save it based on how it feels.
It gets me to jobs just as much as it gets me to tips.
Juggling is a skill that comes in handy in the bartending business, where Daniel Thayer has learned that ups and downs in the economy are part of life.
The guys all get laid off from up at the slope. They come back here with all their money and they drink. So then my business goes up, their business goes down.
Surveys show consumer confidence in Alaska has continued to drop for about a year and a half.
It's going downhill.
Tracking with the drop in oil prices. What kind of an economic future do you see for our state?
Once upon a time, we believed in ourselves and what we did. Now we look for the answers from the outside, and I don't think that's necessarily the way to build the economy. I mean, Alaska needs to invest in Alaska.
I feel bad for those families, and because they're losing their jobs and their positions, and I think, well, what would I do if I was in that situation? I don't know.
If the state were to diversify just a bit,
I hope that I would see prosperity, but it's difficult to know.
It's the main tool of public opinion research.
Oh, get out. I've never seen one of these before.
Ivan Moore has conducted a consumer confidence survey on a quarterly basis for the last 6 years.
Oh.
On a more serious note, Moore says he's very careful not to make predictions about the economy.
The last thing I want to do is add to the anxiety by saying that I think things are going to get worse, All right, I will. I think, ow.
What happened? Did it burn you?
Ow, yeah. Ow.
We can't say we weren't warned about crystal balls and their ability to magnify light, much in the way public opinion can amplify a situation.
I think it's important for people to be optimistic, because the only way things gallop off downhill is if people start freaking out and worrying too much.
Moore says the worry at this point is more like a low-level anxiety.
We also ask how secure people are in their finances, and that hasn't changed at all. So I think the thing we can conclude from that is that the crunch hasn't really hit people yet, but they're bracing for it.
Okay, will the Senate please come to order?
And watching what's going on in Juneau.
The elephant in the room is the budget situation with the state.
I hope that we have voted the right people into the legislature that will make those changes for us and do what's best for the state of Alaska.
I see a tale of two states. One in which the entire state, from one end to the other, is flourishing. But only if the legislature gets it right, which I think doubtful.
Despite the recent drop in consumer confidence, overall, most Alaskans seem to think the economy can bounce back.
I think it's a positive economic feature. There's a lot of natural gas still left on the North Slope. There's tourism.
But many Alaska business leaders fear that if lawmakers continue to put off a budget fix for another year, this well of optimism could dry up and trigger a runaway recession. Well, it's hard to have a conversation about our economy without talking about Alaska's oil industry. Coming up, meet Exxon's #1 guy in Alaska.
When I look and see just the massive gas resources that we have on the North Slope, all I see is potential.
Why Cory Quarles sees a bright future for Alaska despite low oil prices. And at a time when drilling is slowing down on the North Slope, an exception. Up next, we take you to ConocoPhillips' CD5 project on the slope.
When you hear the word cancer, sometimes it's a difficult word to hear and you don't want to accept it. There was just a lot of support right away. It was like everybody just came out and kind of wrapped their arms around me and said it's going to be okay. It's kind of lifted me up to know that there's a lot of people out there who care, who've been in the same situation, who give me hope and motivate me to just be strong and keep going, and that's what I'm doing. So, I mean, you know, when people write in, I wonder sometimes if they don't think it matters, but it does matter.
I just want cremation.
No hidden costs, no add-ons.
Cremation is much more affordable.
Dignified, ecological.
I just want something basic. The simpler, the better.
Cremation sure makes a lot of sense. The Cremation Society of Alaska is now serving families in Anchorage and in the Valley, and we are always on the web at alaskacremation.com. Call us today at 277-2777 or in the Valley 373-8627.
Are you looking for a challenge? Well, the Clean Air Challenge is Saturday, May 7th. It's a bike ride, but it's so much more. It's your chance to support the good work of the American Lung Association here in Alaska. Register to ride or sponsor your favorite rider or team. For information, go to cleanairchallengeak.org. The Clean Air Challenge. I'll be out there. You can be too. Again, go to cleanairchallengeak.org. Experience the ride of your life.
I love you, so don't die on me, okay?
A new Madam Secretary. Then.
Your husband did it, Mrs. Floric.
Then prove it. I've defended enough people to know how shallow those words are. I don't care what you believe. I care what you can prove. So prove it.
A new good wife after Madam Secretary. CBS Tonight.
We've heard a lot about the oil industry pulling back in this era of low oil prices. But the Exxon Point Thomson field reached an important milestone this month. The company declared this natural gas field officially online, and that's no small undertaking. Point Thomson holds 25% of the North Slope's known gas reserves, with a storehouse of 800 trillion cubic feet of gas and 200 million barrels of condensate. Tapping gas for a liquefied natural gas project is probably a long ways out, if it happens at all. The price tag for that project could be as high as $65 billion. But Exxon recently began producing condensates, a byproduct of exploration. We talked with the company's top man in Alaska about that, Cory Quarles, ExxonMobil's Alaska production manager. What do you see in that economic crystal ball for Point Thomson?
When I look and see just the massive gas resources that we have on the North Slope, all I see is potential, significant potential.
A sign of that potential at last. After years of legal battles with the state and technical challenges, the field now produces 10,000 barrels of condensate a day, which flows into the Trans-Alaska Pipeline. Condensates start out as gas, but condense into liquids when they're pumped out of the ground. What is the beauty of condensate production?
The beauty of it is that, you know, while we are developing the project and learning from the project, we're also able to create a source of revenue through selling the condensate. So that's the beauty, that's the win-win.
Exxon has invested more than $4 billion in Point Thomson, and I can't imagine that 10,000 barrels of condensate a day is enough to compensate for that.
Let's go back to 2012 when you know, we put this agreement together, which was the Point Thomson settlement agreement. Well, that agreement essentially was a roadmap. It's a roadmap to get you from which was essentially nothing that was there at Point Thomson to a major gas sales for the North Slope, massive North Slope gas resources. Point Thomson is just a step within that roadmap in order to be able to get there. And so what we've done with this initial project, with this $4 billion investment, is not the end game. It's just a pre-investment for what's to come.
So for you as an engineer and your background, what's it like to work with that field?
You have this abnormally high reservoir pressure, which is over 10,000 pounds per square inch. And to just give you a sense of just, you know, what that means in terms of force, just imagine an elephant putting all of its weight on your thumb. That's how much pressure, you know, that you're actually, you know, talking about.
So what did Exxon finally figure out with Point Thomson that makes this first step possible?
Yeah, so here's the thing is that this re-injecting of a pressure at that at 10,000 pounds per square inch, that's the highest re-injection pressure anywhere in the world. And so it's not that a new technology was needed, but it was actually the application, the first application of already existing technology to be used at Point Thomson.
So what's the trick?
Yeah, I wish it was easy to say that it was actually just one trick, but it was really more of very rigorous and detailed engineering in order to be able to get there. The example that I give to you is the piping that needs to contain this pressure has a thickness of about 3 inches. Point Thomson is truly a remarkable feat.
Turning to another Alaska oil giant, ConocoPhillips. The company recently reported a net loss of $1.5 billion for the first quarter of this year. Even so, ConocoPhillips passed an important milestone this past October when it struck oil on its CD5 development on the North Slope. KTVA's Eric Rubel toured this field, courtesy of ConocoPhillips, for a look at why this project has survived while others have been scaled back.
It's a sight most Alaskans never see, but everyone with a PFD benefits from. The drilling of a new oil well. In this case, it's an injection well on ConocoPhillips' CD5 drill site.
You gotta think a lot. You gotta watch your business.
No job on the slope is easy, but being a driller is an especially demanding task.
He's monitoring everything we got going from mud flow, bid weight, RPMs.
They're drilling at a rate of about 200 feet per hour to a point 10,000 feet inside the earth.
Right now they're taking it real easy on it so we don't tear anything up. So it usually gets pretty rowdy up here when they're drilling.
The rig floor is loud, cramped, and hot, a stark contrast to the environment outside. It takes work during the darkest, coldest days of the year to build CD5, an extension of the Alpine oil field. As the first drill site on the National Petroleum Reserve Alaska, construction can't impact the local environment.
Any supplies too big for a plane have to come by truck. They arrive on this ice road, which is only open 90 days a year. It's a logistical challenge unique to Alpine.
Both years of construction of CD5, we accomplished a huge amount of construction in a very short window of access.
CD5 sits on land owned by the Kupik Corporation. To ensure nearby Nuiqsut Village could maintain its culture of subsistence, the ice road melts in the spring. It gets rebuilt every fall.
Each year we spend about $20 million building the Alpine Resupply Ice Road.
When all wells are finished, CD5 is expected to produce thousands of barrels of oil a day.
It's new oil. It's going to be more oil down the Trans-Alaska Pipeline. It's going to allow us to stop the decline here at Alpine. We're actually on an incline now that we have CD5 on production.
ConocoPhillips has stopped investing in most areas around the globe, but Alaska is an exception.
Alaska has been treated differentially, and that's partly because we have a positive investment climate up here. So we've been investing more, and so far we're continuing to invest more.
After months of darkness, days are quickly getting longer on the slope. ConocoPhillips is confident brighter days are ahead for the oil industry as well.
We're entering some very interesting times, and I think as a state, we'll find a way to get through this.
Reporting for Frontiers, I'm Eric Rubel.
Original development funding was for 15 wells, and when all of the 15 are finished, CD5 is expected to produce 16,000 barrels of oil a day. That's expected to increase because the CD5 pad was designed for 33 wells. In April, the company announced that it will add 18 more wells, bringing the site up to its capacity. Well, so far, the economic crystal ball has mixed messages for Alaska. When we come back, we'll talk with one man who keeps a close eye on the Alaskan economy, Jonathan King with Northern Economics. We'll find out what he sees in store for our state.
The Alaska Native Tribal Health Consortium provides comprehensive health services for Alaska Native and American Indian people across our state. In addition to world-class care at the Alaska Native Medical Center, our work delivers health services for rural Alaska. From cutting-edge technology for the best care possible, to modern construction of clean water systems and health clinics, to health training and outreach that honors our culture, our vision is that Alaska Native people are the healthiest people in the world.
Tobacco hurts everything and everyone it touches. If you do smoke, take it outside.
One caring foster parent
can make the difference
between a good life
and a not so good life
for a child.
What does it take?
The willingness to be there.
The willingness to care.
The willingness
to open your heart
and your home
for one child.
One child.
One child.
Me.
Will you be the difference for one child? Call today, 1-800-478-7307.
We're in Ruby, and it was on the thermometer 22 below. So I go inside, and I say, wow, it's 22 below. And she says, well, that thermometer's off by 6 degrees, so it's about 28. Guy sitting next to her chimes in, he says, well, that's not quite accurate as well, too. He says, you got to take another 7 degrees because you're up here, and so it's really about 35 below. And then someone else comes in and says, yeah, but then when you get the wind coming in, it's another 10 degrees. So he said, so really, a couple hundred yards away, you could be at 45 below. Mushers come in and they say, gee, my thermometer bottomed out at 65 below. So we went from 22 below to 65 below, like that.
Boom and busts have long been a part of Alaska's history. So is our state big enough to take control of its own destiny? Does what's going on in Juneau right now really matter? Well, economists like Jonathan King are watching to see if this cycle of the past can be broken. Are we in one of these typical Alaska cycles, do you think, Jonathan?
Rhonda, we are in one of these typical Alaska cycles. You know, we're a commodity-based economy. We rise and fall with the money that flows in and out of our economy from either federal spending or, in this case, oil spending. And you know, those days always seem darkest when you're at the bottom of one of these troughs.
Well, we have some numbers that the Oil Industry Alliance provided us, and they say that since last year we've lost about 2,300 jobs, and then in 2015, 1,300 support industry jobs, 500 to 600 this year. So that translates into trouble somewhat, doesn't it?
It certainly does. You know, we have to remember that we have a 350,000 job economy here in the state of Alaska. You know, oil and gas and construction, those are the two sectors that have really taken it on the chin with the decline in oil prices. In the oil and gas sector, we've lost about 11% of our jobs. It's about 6% in construction. And then after that, you get to state education, which is the university system, and state employment. Both of those are down between 4% and 5%. So we've seen some losses, but actually overall, the economy is holding steady in terms of the number of jobs from where it was a year ago.
But you, of course, did this poll on consumer confidence. And it seems to show that there's some erosion there, that people are starting to feel these things. Statewide, people, 56% of the people you surveyed said that they think the economy is getting worse.
We have seen a real shift towards the negative in how people perceive the economy going forward here in Alaska. But we have to remember that taken as a whole, our index has dropped from 60 just down to just below 50. So we haven't fallen off the cliff quite yet.
But it's also interesting that people feel better about their local economy than their state economy. You'd think the two would be connected.
We do find that the closer it is to the person, the better they feel about it. In fact, if we ask people about their personal finances, which we do, they still feel pretty good about their personal finances. They feel not quite as good about their local economy, and then the state's economy is they feel even less positively about. So the consumer is kind of hanging in there, but their expectations for the state as a whole are really muted at this point.
Still, to lose so many jobs in the oil and gas industry, it's a hit, but apparently not enough to cause us the kind of pain that we felt in the 80s.
We have to remember that the economy has fundamentally restructured since the 1980s. We have an economy that is much more consumer driven. The healthcare sector is much better. In the 80s, we didn't have the ANCSA corporations, the native corporations. We didn't have the CDQ groups.
And those are the community development quota groups to allow coastal communities to take advantage of profits in the Bering Sea fisheries.
Correct. They harvest the groundfish, some of the groundfish resources. And those groups all taken together, we are in a fundamentally different place than we were in the 80s, but we are still highly reliant on oil as our primary source of state revenues.
Well, I want to take a look at a survey that Alaska Dispatch did on people moving, and normally I guess we get about 5% of people moving out of the state. Some new people come in, but out of about 750 people surveyed, they found that the state budget, the status of that was making about 7% think that they might leave. Do you find that number a little bit troubling?
Well, it does concern me, but I think that, in the abstract, people respond to those things with a lot of fear. And I think people realize that the economy may change over the next couple of years and they may have to leave. But we have a very mobile workforce, as you said, 5% year over year, every year tend to leave. We also have a lot of boomers that are at a phase of life where they might also be deciding to retire somewhere else. So we're just going to have to see, but right now we don't expect the stampede that we saw in the 80s.
People leaving their homes behind with the keys to the bank and such. Are we seeing, though, some erosion in the real estate market?
We are seeing some slowdown in the real estate market, particularly for high-end homes. One of the biggest issues right now, actually, in the real estate market is supply, because people don't want to move up the ladder in terms of homes, and so they're not putting their either entry-level homes or mid-level homes on the market. And so there are buyers out there, but they are in some ways struggling to find properties to purchase.
Well, we have to talk about state revenues. I mean, we have a $4 billion budget gap right now. And when you look at this picture here of where state revenues have gone, this is pretty drastic.
If you look at, our state revenues have collapsed. I mean, there's no other way to look at it. We've gone from earning $10 billion in unrestricted general fund revenue for FY 2012 to less than $1 billion for this year and for next year. That's like living in a household that has two income earners and they're making $100,000, and 4 years later combined the two of you are making $8,000. It's only because of our cash reserves, the constitutional budget reserve and the statutory budget reserve, that we've been able to weather the last couple of years.
I mean, when you consider that big of a drop in state revenues, is it pretty amazing that we aren't all panicking right now?
I think a lot of people actually don't realize how much state revenues have dropped. Even for me, when I was putting together that figure, that picture of that fall it's a pretty impressive collapse, and you'd be hard pressed to find any other state that has gone through anything like that in recent memory.
Well, taking a look at what's going on in Juneau, they're continuing to work on a long-range budget solution, and it seems for the most part pretty far out of reach right now. Why is it so important that they take care of this?
Well, we do think that our household confidence index is reflecting a broader uncertainty in the economy, a lot of which has to do with the uncertainty in Juneau. One of the things we have to remember as Alaskans is that we are very cash strapped at the moment, but we have a lot of wealth, and there are paths forward for us to stabilize the economy. But until the legislature acts, individuals can't make decisions, governments can't make decisions, firms can't make decisions, and that brings uncertainty into the entire economy. So the more quickly that we can get to a reasonable long-term solution, the better off it's going to be for us in the long run.
You know, we are always on an economic seesaw in this state, going back to fish, gold, you name it. I mean, can we overcome our history here with something that takes us off this economic seesaw?
Well, I think what we can do is we can limit how much the seesaw goes back and forth. We have built a wealth, we have built wealth in this state that through a variety of revenue sources and controlling our spending can help us weather going up and down. But one thing that we have to remember, as we saw earlier in the program, is that oil is going to be part of this economy for a long time, and that means that revenues from oil are going to go up and down as we go through that commodity cycle. So we can do it. We just have to make the social and political choice to do it.
So before we go here, I have to ask you, we got our economic crystal ball right there. What do you see in it?
I love the crystal ball, and I'll try not to get burned in the same way that Ivan did. I see a period of uncertainty. The crystal ball says that we're going to have some stormy seas here for right now, but I also think the crystal ball is reminding us that all of the things that brought many of us to Alaska, have had people stay in Alaska, those things are still here. We still have all the opportunities that we used to have, and those haven't changed. And so we have to remember that as we move forward, that the state has the potential for a bright future. It just needs to find a path forward at this point.
And what does the public have to do?
Well, I think the public has to, first of all, remain calm and not panic. I think the other thing the public has to do is get engaged. They need to contact their legislator. They need to contact the legislature in general. And this is your state. We are the owner state, and people need to take ownership of the future of the state of Alaska.
And on that note, we'll head out here, but it has been fun to gaze into the economic crystal ball. It's a reminder that Alaska's economy is still a young and developing frontier. We want to thank you for being a part of our weekly conversation, and we'll see you next week.